Hey folks, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about in-house versus outsourcing. So specifically, I'm going to be talking about this in the context of marketing, right? Because in marketing, you can hire a really big team and do literally everything in-house. And I've seen situations where people outsource every single function. I'm going to walk you through pros and cons. What do I see as most kind of common scenario for people and what are the options that are out there? All right, let's dive into it.
SaaS CMO Pro.
Hey guys, Bill Masitis here, former CMO, CRO of Slack, before that CMO of Zendesk, and before that SVP of Marketing at Salesforce. Today's topic is in-house versus outsourcing. So this is kind of a common question all the times I'll get from CEOs or even marketing leaders, right? I'm like, hey, what can we outsource? What should we be doing in-house? And what are the pros and cons of them? So my fundamental theory in this is that, it is a spectrum. And you really can go at different points. Like there's pros and cons on each of them. So if you're a startup, maybe you're an AI startup, you want to move quick, right? Like this market is getting decided that very day and you got to move fast, right? In that case, like when you're creating a marketing function, you can outsource a lot of that. I mean, really, literally almost every single function in marketing, there is an outsourced agency that will do it. I don't care if it's messaging, if it's paid advertising, if it's, competitive, if it's pricing and packaging, there are agencies that will do that, right? Now, of course, the pro is that you can move really fast, right? When you hire people, it is what it is, right? It's going to take you time to, put out that job rec, to get it out there, to go through those interviews, to have that person come in, and even for that person to ramp up. You could be looking at, 3, 6, 9 months, a year, depending on the seniority of these people that you're trying to bring in. And all the time, your board is, hammering you like, hey, you got to move faster, right? So a lot of times for these early startups, I will recommend like, hey, if you want to supercharge that growth or start, really helping on the marketing side, it's okay to start leveraging these agencies. There's a lot out there. It's a common request I get from, different companies I advise with is, hey, Bill, like, who do you think is great for messaging? Who's great for pricing and packaging? Who can do our SEM to start off with? And I'm always happy to help out there. Now, of course, the obvious con on this is the cost, right? It's going to cost more to go to an agency than it is going to bring this in-house. You just kind of have to weigh it, right? And you're going to have these type of decisions all the time, right? Even when you build out that marketing team, you'll have decisions like, hey, well, we're expanding internationally. Do I build an entirely duplicative staff in these regions to do all the other marketing functions, or do we centralize everything under one team, right? Like when you put resources in regions, they're going to move faster. They're also going to like it because they have their own resources. But when you keep everything under the, centralized in one team, it's going to be much more efficient, right? And there's pros and cons on these things. The second area is the lens that I always like to think about is I do think you need to have a couple of core competencies in marketing. You need to get good at a couple things. And I really think in those cases, like for those core competencies, like your super strengths, bring those in-house. It's one of those things where I think when you have an in-house team, you can just move a little bit faster, right? You have this endemic knowledge of your customers, whatever the specifics are of kind of that super strength that it is. Maybe you're great at doing in-house video. Maybe you're great at doing messaging, whatever it is, right? It's okay to have some in-house resources there to build up that core competency. I think it's a little bit, risky when you're outsourcing everything, right? Because then, sometimes you move on from an agency or something, and then it's like they have all that historical knowledge. You'll see it a lot with like people that use SEM for outsourcing. Like they have a lot of your stuff. Like sometimes it's difficult to make these transitions, and intentionally so.
And I'm not giving it back.
So that's one area to think about. Another lens to think about when you're doing in-house versus outsourcing comes a lot of times on the creative side. So what we found at Slack was we had an amazing creative team at Slack, but we were growing so fast that a lot of times the creatives would be working on the product, right? That was kind of like priority one. And so a lot of times for like our ad campaigns, we would have to use outsource agencies. Now, one nice byproduct of that was that I think you do get some fresh perspectives, right? When you use an outsource or an agency, they're going to come in with beginner's mind. And I think that's something that is really important in marketing for really like company overall is a lot of times what I find happen is like when you've been there, the founders, by definition, the founders have been there the longest. They've been there, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And how they think about the product and how they explain it is very different than how like a new person experiences it and what they think it is and how the words they use to explain it. And sometimes when you're using an outside agency, they will bring that beginner's mind. I think that's really powerful. Another benefit, and I hate this is kind of dark and macabre to say, but sometimes you're working with an agency and it just isn't working out, right? it's a lot easier to cut ties with an agency than it is to go like, oh, all right, my 5 internal designers that not working, right, to let them go or to fire them. Like it's just harder, right? And I think, sometimes like, especially for these like fresh creative areas, having outside agencies that you can come or even leverage several, right, to go between, it kind of just keeps the energy high, it keeps them fresh, it gets a lot of new perspective coming in. All right, so there's some quick pros and cons on how I've kind of seen in-house versus outsourcing, whether you leverage agencies, whether you don't. Like I said, at the end of the day, there's some pros and cons, right? You have to leverage how quick you want to move, how fast you want to move. But again, if you do want to tap into these agencies, there are agencies for everything. And I mean everything that you could possibly think of in marketing. Sometimes it's okay. Like sometimes maybe it's a hard time hiring a certain person or hiring a certain role, or maybe you just want to get a fresh perspective. Like try out an agency, right? Like see how it works for you. I'm curious though to hear from you guys. Like, when you've used agencies, do you like it? Do you wish you used more? Have you had bad experiences? Put them in the comments. I'd love to hear from that. And thanks again for joining.